In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Etihad A380-800 all the way from Abu Dhabi to London Heathrow on one of the airline's flagship routes. Now, once upon a time, the epitome of luxury on steroids, the Etihad A380 was the show pony to the airline's premium customers. However, with high operating costs and residence suites with a price tag to match, the airline's luxury cabins were soon becoming a textbook case for unchecked ambition. Following some time in storage, we've seen these birds come out once again, probably for the last time, so we will take a look at the Etihad experience in the context of its A380. A very good afternoon to you everybody, and welcome to Zayed International Airport at Abu Dhabi. This is the home of Etihad Airways and a major hub for traffic that connects Europe and the US with Asia. Now, Zayed Airport's origin commenced way back in 1974 when the Emirati government decided it was time to move the city from this to this. And to facilitate this growth, Etihad was founded in 2003. Now, Etihad Airways and Zayed International Airport are like two sides of the same coin. The success of Zayed International Airport has Etihad's name written all over it. Etihad has deployed its operations out of this airport since as early as 2003. Now, Etihad is the Arabic word for unity, and as such is symbolic of the diverse group of people that get this airline off the ground every single day. Everyone, from the airline's cabin crew, pilots and ground staff, seem to be from somewhere other than the UAE. Our aircraft this afternoon is Alpha 6-Alpha Papa India. At the time of filming this, the aircraft is about 8.2 years old. Now, Etihad got their first A380 in 2014, only lagging a few years behind Singapore Airlines and Emirates. However, the airline has served the United Kingdom since March of 2004, opening up more competition between the UK, Asia and eventually Australia. The crew this afternoon will operate EY-17 all the way to London, and then a fresh crew will take over the aircraft and bring it back to Abu Dhabi by dawn break. Boarding was soon called for EY-17, and believe me when I say these loads were sparse, less than 50% in our cabin today. As soon as we boarded, I was greeted by an extremely enthusiastic cabin crew member. The economy class cabin is laid out in a 343 configuration. Now, before you have a meltdown, remember this is the A380, so you really don't feel it at all. It's very manageable. The cabin has a refreshing appearance accompanied by Etihad's unique boarding music. The seat colors resemble that of the desert with a somewhat sand-type finish to them. Every seat comes furnished with a pillow, blanket and amenities bag. Welcome to seat 76 Kilo. This is the seat that's actually just behind the emergency exit row. Now, typically these seats are 17.5 inches wide with a seat pitch of 31 inches. Each seat has a personal audio and video screen, universal power outlet and personalized air conditioning vents.
Of Captain Olivier and myself, it's a pleasure to have you on board of this Airbus A380 bound to London Heathrow. Flight time today 7 hours and 50 minutes, good conditions, and we're going to cruise at an altitude initially of 38,000 feet. On behalf of Etihad Airways, the national airline of United Arab Emirates, it's a great pleasure to have you on board. Sit back.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي سخر لنا هذا وما كنا له مقرنين وإنا إلى ربنا لمنقلبون صدق الله العظيم. حضرات الضيوف الكرام، اسمي مسعد، يسرني أن أكون واحد من أفراد طاقم الطائرة الذي سيتولى العناية بكم على متن هذه الرحلة المتجهة إلى لندن. أتمنى أن تستمتعوا بتبادل راحة.
Boarding was soon completed and pushback is just minutes away from happening. I alerted the cabin crew that I'll be filming, and her response was, "That's fine, let me just check with my supervisor first, but I'm pretty sure that's perfectly fine." But as soon as we started pushback, she came and tapped me on my shoulder and said, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but my supervisor said you're not actually allowed to film. However, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, none of us are going to enforce it, so if you still want to film, feel free to do so." Okay, Chief, you don't need to tell me twice. As we progress towards Heathrow, now would be as good a time as any to talk about the Etihad Equity Investment Program. This was referred to by their own management as the failed spree of acquisitions in Europe. Unbeknownst to anybody, Etihad saw some potential in Air Berlin, now defunct, Jet Airways, now defunct, and Alitalia, also now defunct. But to understand these acquisitions, we need to understand what Etihad was up against. With the likes of its dominating Middle Eastern counterparts, Emirates and Qatar, the airline needed a way to build its network aggressively. And for some reason that's not entirely known, so the best way to go about with this was to pump a bunch of money into loss-making carriers. And this wasn't all hunky-dory. Etihad was demanding major route and schedule changes to these airlines upon stake acquisition. And in most cases, these routes were simply not feasible. So when Etihad was met with resistance by unions that were more than competent at simply saying no, the collapse of these airlines and subsequently the network was an inevitable fate that awaited the airline. Now in fairness, these acquisitions weren't all massive failures. Virgin Australia and Air Seychelles did fairly well, although Etihad did eventually give up their shares in Virgin. Air Serbia also did eventually bring the traffic into Abu Dhabi that Etihad wanted, but that doesn't avail any of these acquisitions from being referred to as more than controversial. Now shortly after departure, the aircraft began heading in a generally northern direction, leaving the sunny desert behind and setting course for the UK. Now Etihad has a good selection of TV series, but the problem is, each series only has a few episodes. However, there is a fairly good selection of movies which I quite enjoyed. The audio, on the other hand, is delivered through these state-of-the-art headphones. Now EY17 has a lunch service and a light refreshment service, and the crew didn't waste much time in getting the service started. Now naturally, Etihad being an airline based out of the Arabian Peninsula, I of course had to get the teriyaki chicken, but honestly this was a fantastic meal. The flight attendant on my incoming flight from Melbourne gave me a heads up saying, if you're on EY17, get the teriyaki chicken, and I'm glad I took her advice. But more importantly, it's nice for me to see that Etihad always does consistently well on catering, and that's something I found to be the standard on all their flights. However, the real prize winner here is the dessert. Etihad consistently does very well on this front, and they never really tell us what the dessert is. But after some quick researching, I realized it was banoffee pie that they were serving us. All in all, just a fantastic catering product that really stood out to me. Now the lavatories were kept extremely clean and tidy throughout the flight and systematically cleaned by the crew every couple of hours. The facilities themselves consist of some basic amenities which include a soap dispenser but no toothbrushes or any other items that could really be necessary for a flight of this duration. Now the thing about the cabin crew on this flight is that the service just lacked refinement. They were polite enough, but instead of interacting with their passengers, all of them kind of just hung out in the middle of the galley and chatted very loudly. And I was right next to the galley, so best believe that every time I had my headphones off, I heard every ounce of their conversation. And for instance, when they did the drink run, I asked for orange juice, and when she didn't hear me, instead of saying pardon or I'm sorry, could you please repeat that, she simply said what juice, almost snapping at me, but not intentionally. And the same crew member, when I asked her for Bailey's coffee, she poured regular coffee into my cup. Then when I re-clarified that I asked for Bailey's, she just added Bailey's into the existing cup of black coffee that she had already poured. Some of the crew were fantastic, two in particular were very nice. During one of their multiple drink runs, I asked for a coffee with a cup of ice, and he chuckled saying, "Oh, are you gonna have yourself a nice iced coffee?" And I said yes, to which he laughed and said, "Sounds delicious, enjoy." But I also did appreciate the fact that they systematically clean the lavatories. Every 2 hours, I watched them go with their PPE, and like clockwork, 3 attendants would take on the lavatories at the back, so they were all cleaned very well. But something that I really couldn't understand was at some point I needed to get my bottle filled, and when I went to the galley and I asked if they could fill it up, she, without thinking twice, poured boiling hot water into my plastic bottle. She didn't even think twice about it, didn't even bother to question how safe that was. Now, since I booked an overnight layover in Abu Dhabi to specifically catch the A380 because at the time I was flying, this was one of the few A380 services to London, most of the other Australians who were on my inbound flight had connected to Europe on the red eyes that were timed specifically to meet the inbound from Melbourne, so the passengers on this flight were mostly passengers connecting from various points in Asia or the Middle East. So about 1 hour and 15 minutes from touchdown, the crew came around with some light refreshments. This is the 3-cheese chunky tomato and oregano calzone, not on the healthier end of the spectrum and definitely mediocre tasting at best. This was accompanied with yet another beverage run, and it was a far cry from what we'd been served as soon as we left Abu Dhabi. So, while the full-fledged meal services on Etihad are remarkable, these pre-packaged snacks that I guess come from the same kitchen aren't all that great.
Paris. We shall start our descent within the next 10 minutes, depending on air traffic control. Latest weather information in London Heathrow, temperature of 13 degrees Celsius and easterly wind with some scattered clouds. On behalf of Etihad Airways and the entire crew, it was a pleasure to have you on board this evening with us, and we are looking forward to see you again. Thank you and have a very pleasant evening in London. Thanks for your attention. Cabin crew, top of descent in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, thank you.
Now, as we get closer to the UK, we were briefed on our arrival procedure. The flight attendant, the same one who told me she was going to turn a blind eye to me filming, now came and took her landing position. She then leaned towards my direction from her jump seat and said, "In future, if you want to film, email Etihad before you fly and they'll give you special access and pre-boarding." Look, honestly, that's not what this channel is about, but I appreciate the gesture. Plenty of airline reviewers use that card and have the red carpet pulled out for them. But then I need to ask myself, would that really make this an authentic experience? I don't really think so. One thing I really should add though is that no matter what, they really have a good working relationship with each other. And during boarding, I saw one crew member hug the other one and said, "Oh my god, where have you been?" And even as a passenger, when I see this, personally, I feel like they're a closely knit team. Now that being said, stick around to the end because you'll be very interested to know how Etihad performed on this flight. Now, any and all information that is relevant to this flight can be found in the description, and while you're down there sussing those deets out, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. It's absolutely free of charge. And if you'd like to know more about my flights, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. Enjoy the landing, and I'll revert to you once we've touched down.
إلى أن تتوقف الطائرة توقفا كليا ويتم إطفاء علامة ربط حزمة المقاعد. يرجى أخذ على الحيطة.
Alrighty, welcome to the United Kingdom. Where has Etihad done well today? First, transiting at Abu Dhabi Airport is extremely easy and straightforward to do. Even things like security are often quick and friendly affairs. Second, the A380, just a fantastic bird to fly on and well maintained by the crew today, and also just in general showing no visible signs of adverse aging. Third, the crew today, well, kind of. Two of them were super nice. Also, the lunch served out of Abu Dhabi was simply fantastic. Price-wise, they are also competitive, and I think this is where Etihad really wins. Especially from Australia to the UK, I actually don't know how Qantas can even operate this route with so much competition. Etihad is quite affordable. So what are the major shortcomings of Etihad? Well, firstly, they sold me a hotel for their free layover that didn't actually exist and still charged me $15 for it, regardless of them telling me that I didn't actually qualify for it. Seems a bit scammy if you ask me. Also, some of the crew need a little bit of service refinement. Excuse me and pardon go a long way. Finally, the one cabin bag policy can make life a little bit hectic. If you need your laptop for urgent work, figure out how to fit it into the one suitcase that you'll have to bring on board. And now for what you've all been waiting for, here is the final score for today's flight. That's all for now. Safe travels wherever you're headed. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me in another trip report in the near future.